One of the things that, every time you go into these places where they give you these throwaways and then you throw them away, you just have to, this kind of Kantian thing where think if everybody did that and it became a universal fact. Mm-hmm. Because not everybody's doing it. Like there's places where it's amazing how little garbage they produce.
Yeah.
Right, and Aboriginal people, I lived with Bedouin, spent a lot of time with Bedouin, and Aboriginal people, and it's a nice word because it means, in Latin it's the idea from the original people, mm-hmm. ab origin, it's out of the first people, and the word Bedu, which is what they call themselves mm-hmm. in Arabic, means the first people. And this is why in some traditions they call them the first nations, the first peoples, there's great things that come. I mean, I'm glad Shakespeare's in the world. Mm-hmm. I'm glad Mutanabbi's in the world, Rumi. I think a lot of people, feel like the world would be less than it is without Bach or without, and some people without, Lady Gaga, there's whole slews of people that just get something out of the artist, but all of the things that we love about civilization, the question we have to ask ourselves now, is it all worth it?
Right.
In terms of what civilization is doing to us as a species. And I think that's a real question, because we have to somehow learn what Aboriginal peoples have known, how to live sustainably mm-hmm. on the planet. And they have great things to teach us, but they're messed up too. So it's not, because I know in firsthand, just living, they have their problems. They're grappling, a lot of Aboriginal peoples do not have a way of dealing with modernity when it's introduced. And an example of that, for people that know the work of Jerry Mander, not the political word, but the writer, mm-hmm. He wrote a book called The 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. And in that book, one of the studies they did in Canada, they had the good fortune of being able to watch a Inuit Native American village as electricity was introduced. And they studied it to see what would happen. So they basically determined it took 5 years to destroy their traditional culture. Once television, 5 years. And I saw that firsthand in Mauritania, because mm-hmm. I lived with Bedouin. I was in a town that had no electricity. Every night it was literally chanting. The whole village was chanting the Quran. It was like bees buzzing, and it was one of the most extraordinary things. And then you had the sky. See, I think one of the reasons why we've lost our spirituality is because of artificial light. And it's interesting we call it artificial light, mm-hmm. because if you look up at the sky in the Sahara Desert, and I've been reduced to tears on many nights, just look, the heavens declare your glory.
I've been in the Sinai. I know. It's breathtaking.
It's breathtaking, and there's a reason why those guys fled to the desert, mm-hmm. Because if you want to be close to the heavens, that's as close as you're going to get. We don't see the stars anymore. Mm-hmm. Plato said God put the stars there to show us the order of the heavens, that we would desire to bring the order down into ourselves. So what happens when we don't see the heavens anymore? And I would really like to see a city, you might think of this, Mayor Fisher might think of just having an hour, once a month, where all the lights in the city are turned off on a clear night, so that people can actually go out and see the heavens. Yeah. Just see the heavens. It's amazing. Stars are amazing, and they do it geocentrically. Nobody points that out, that when you're in a planetarium, they don't have you revolving around the heavens. They have the heavens revolving around you.
It's the ultimate.
So they have to do a Ptolemaic planetarium. Just to use another tradition, in some traditional Buddhism, the chef in the monastery had to be enlightened. Like, they didn't let just anybody into the kitchen. And in the Islamic tradition, there's a whole tradition about food preparation and the intention of the cook. And so that my teachers, the people that cooked, always made the intention that the food was a healing. One of the things that's really interesting in our culture, you know, when you go to, they don't teach grammar anymore, so people use transitive verbs as intransitive verbs. But when you go to a restaurant, they say enjoy, right? Enjoy is, you know, I mean, I guess you could make it a intransitive, but you usually enjoy something. But here it means the food, so, but they just say enjoy. You know, in traditional cultures, they never would say something like that. They would say like salud, you know, with health. In the Arabic culture, they say bisah wal afiyah, with health and well-being, which reminds us of the purpose of the food. It's not to enjoy. Enjoyment is part of it. I mean, it's wonderful that food is so enjoyable, but that's not the reason why you're actually eating it. That's why the glutton eats. But somebody who's serious about maintaining their health, they eat for health. And you know, we're literally digging our graves with our teeth. I mean, in our culture, we are literally killing ourselves with the food we eat. And so you know, I would say that all traditional peoples ate with just a knowledge of what food was about. And this is why the Kisharat tradition, you know, the halal tradition, that you have to, there's a whole, you know, Native Americans took permission in many of their traditions. They took permission from the animal in the Islamic tradition, the Jewish tradition. There is actual, you have to do it in a way, you know, in our tradition, you're not allowed to kill an animal in front of another animal. And if you look, I mean, it's arguable that it's unethical to eat meat today, unless you're on a farm where you're you know. And there was an interesting article about a man who decided for 1 year. I didn't see the film, but he did a documentary where he only ate what he killed for 1 year. And when he would buy the sheep, one of the sheep farmers told him, you know, he said, I think I'm going to call that, you know, Zeke. And he said, no, don't name them, because you'll get attached to them. But he chose to name them. What he said was, the thing that struck him most was the gratitude he felt to the animal when he ate it. And in our tradition, there's a belief that the animal wants to be energy for good deeds. Because by becoming part of a righteous person, it's elevated in its state from an animal that doesn't have free will, that only behaves according to its nature, to part of a being with free will. And the animal hates to be used for foulness or for misdeeds. And so that whole cosmology, which might sound romantic, but it was real. People, and I met people that still live like this, and my wife does this. She cooks with that intention. If I cook with that intention. When I serve food, I cook with that intention. I'll just tell you one quick story. I have a friend of mine who's a connoisseur of tea, and he'll only drink certain teas. And in England, PG Tips is like the worst tea. And he went to a friend of mine's house, and I know both of them. And it was tea time, and the English take this very seriously. And so he only had PG Tips in the house. And so he said, God, he's going to know this is horrible tea. So he goes in and he told me that he made a prayer over the tea. And he said, oh God, make this delightful for my friend. And he went in and he poured the tea, and he told me that he drank, and he said, you know, that's the best cup of tea I think I've ever had. And, you know, there's a reality to these things. We don't realize just the power of intention. You know, niyya in Arabic, which means intention, also means seed. It's the seed of the thing, why you do so. And so many of us do things without intention. There's no intentionality. And intention, I know in your tradition, in our tradition, intention is everything. Why you're doing something. And constantly asking yourself, why am I doing this?